2-hour flight, isn't it?
Sir, I went while Morocco was under military lockdown. I bribed my way out of the country. I had people drive me hidden, then got a boat to fucking Spain, then a bus, then a car, then a train, all the way to Portugal because it was still open.
Welcome to the Bali podcast. This is our first episode. My name is Kike.
I'm Hennedy.
And I'm Steve.
We started this podcast to share a little bit about the magic of living in Bali, the amazing people we meet from all over the world, and an insight into the life of the crazy people that took the leap of faith to move to the other side of the world.
Hennedy,
Why are you starting this podcast?
So let's just say I am doing it for the girlies back home that wish they could be where I am today. And I just want to show them that believing in themselves is the answer and that everything is possible once you put in the time and effort.
Beautiful. So I moved to Bali 2 years ago, and on a regular, I meet amazing people. Bali is this magical place where all of us come together. None of us work 9 to 5. We just create. We're creators coming together, and it just works.
you know, it's the 9 to 5 mentality in Bali, which really a lot of people actually come to Bali to escape the 9 to 5 mentality. I've come across so many people that don't want to work the 9 to 5. It's about the 9 to 5. What is it in these figures? 9 to 5, everybody just refuses them and then flees off to Asia, specifically Bali. And then I come across them. Have these conversations where I think maybe it's good for you to work a 9 to 5. You know, find some structure in your life and try and dull out some of the chaos. But I don't know. The 9 to 5 sometimes seems pretty damn good to me when I hear a bunch of the stories out there.
Well, if we're completely honest with one another, we do work longer hours than people working 9 to 5s. 9 to 5s provide safety and comfort in pure chaos and discomfort where you know you're going to get very little, but at least it is promised. So you put in an absurd amount of time and energy towards that very promised little rather than taking a chance in maybe a lot, but not so sure. So we are okay with a lot, maybe, not so sure if we put in the effort, while 9 to 5 is more. I can just dissociate and do the bare minimum or work really hard but still make just as much as the other person.
I 100% agree. When I started my first company, I used to joke I quit my 9 to 5 to work 24/7. So that's something that most people, I think, have a misconception. They think when you're your own boss or you start your own thing, you're on a permanent vacation. You can do whatever you want. But the reality is you work way more and you don't have weekends, holidays, like
That's true.
that's gone. Versus 9 to 5, you're like, you don't care. That's one of the biggest things I noticed, the attitude change from having your own company versus being an employee. Night and day difference.
Being your own boss is great, but you really it's you have to love what you do so much that you can keep going at it and be motivated at it, because in the beginning or sometimes the money's just not there. Like in some of the months I've made absolutely nothing, and in other months I've just raked in 100,000-200,000 euros, and I thought, like, how the hell did this happen?
And in Bali, it's a very interesting dynamic because you have people from all the ranges, people that just quit their job and they have no idea what they're doing. They're in Bali to find themselves, which is a little bit of my story as well. And then you have people that were very successful, retired, and they're just here. They're not working. And then you have people that are in the mix. They started their own company, things are going well, or they're figuring out. But one of the beauties of the community in Bali is people tend to help each other out. People are always here to support each other and build on each other. And since we're all in the same page, it's very easy to collaborate and find synergy and help each other grow.
It's funny you mentioned the retired part. There are some people out there who thought, right, I've got enough money, I'm going to retire. And they've done that. And there is no pot of gold or pot of happiness at the end of retirement.
It is ridiculous and absurd if you wait until your late 60s to retire, until your mid 60s to retire. We're not human doings. We're supposed to be, and our purpose is to understand ourselves, not just slave to survive. So realistically, the difference between us, people in Bali, and people that still have 9 to 5s is that we lead with faith. We just have faith that no matter what we do, no matter what happens, if we succeed or not, well, we can always start anew. And that 9 to 5 in a call center is not going to disappear anytime soon. If I fail, I can do that again and try again and again and again. So we lead with faith that everything's going to be okay, even when we're broke, even when we have a lot, while everyone else is leading from a place of fear that if they don't have enough money, if they don't get married, if they don't have children, if they don't buy the house, everything will go to shit. Everything is always going to shit, but it's always also going really well if you pause for a moment and focus on right now. And right now, nothing really matters.
Beautifully said. I would like to ask you all about the leap of faith that you took to move across the world by yourself, or at least I did that. I moved across the world by myself, didn't have a friend, away from my family, away from my loved ones. So how was that process for you, Tosif? You moving to Bali, what made you take that leap?
Well, I've been to Bali in 2017. The story, the story had to do with my husky, the alleged husky that I already mentioned. My a friend of mine, a Russian friend of mine, she said to me, "Look, I'm going to Moscow with my husky. If you want, I'll take your husky along to husky camp." And I thought, well, that sounds great. So I sent my husky off to husky camp, and I thought, what am I going to do now? And then a friend of mine, he said to me, "Hey, we're going with the boys to Dubai for a couple of days. Why don't you come along?" Now, mind you, this was the first time I had been on this side of the world from Holland, being born and raised, being in Dubai and more towards Asia in December. And the weather was fantastic. After 4 days of Dubai and hardly any sleep, I had packed my little hand carry, and I thought, I'm going on. The friends of mine, they were telling me, "Hey, this is not an after party, you're going on. This is an airport you're going to, You don't just go to, with the after parties, we get it." Got to the airport, said to the guy, "Please book me a ticket." He goes, "Where to?" I said, "I don't know, anywhere really nice and sunny, more towards Asia, anywhere." And he goes, "You're going to have to give me a location, sir." I said, "Where are you from?" Just trying to make conversation. He goes, "Well, I'm from Singapore." I said, "Is it nice and sunny there?" He responded, "Well, yes, it is." "Perfect. Book me a flight to fucking Singapore." He goes, "Okay, wow. I will, but please stop swearing." At that moment, he booked me a flight to Singapore, and I landed in Singapore. I hadn't slept, of course, for the last 4 days in Dubai, and got onto one of these double-decker buses. On top of the double-decker bus, without the roof, the sun was shining so bright. I wanted to sit upstairs with my little hand carry, and I did. And I fell asleep without even knowing. For about a couple of hours, I was up in the sun being baked, nobody waking me up. And when I finally woke up, I was sunburned, and I was so angry, predominantly at myself, but I guess Singapore was also to blame, and the bus driver. So got myself back to the airport immediately, and asked the guide, what is the closest place? The sun's shining, closest place, and from here, right now, I just want to go right now. And the first flight that was leaving was to Bali. So he said, yeah, wow. Bali. So I ended up in Bali in that fashion, and stayed in Bali then, took a villa, stayed in Bali for about 4 months, and I sang a lot of karaoke at the pool. This was a very unique experience for the first time. Massive villa, couple of bedrooms, just everything for myself. I had, I didn't have many experiences living without my mother or without my ex-wives. So I've packed up my fridge with beer. That's what a man does, packs up their fridge with a beer, and obviously some psychedelics, mushrooms, which from the Gillies got. And on a daily basis, all I did was just make myself in the morning a magic mushroom shake, swim in the pool, sit down, and I had picked up this microphone in Singapore, and you could sing on this microphone, and you could Bluetooth, it could connect with your phone. It was karaoke all day on magic mushrooms for 4 months. I loved Bali. This is how I entered Bali, and after that, my dog came back from husky camp. I had to go back to Holland. What about you?
A little unhinged, but beautiful. Well, my first ever solo trip was to Bali. I remember since I was a teenager, I was always telling my dad, as soon as I turn 18, I am leaving the house. He's like, yeah, of course. As soon as I turn 18, I am going and traveling around the world, and that's what I'm going to do. Yeah, of course. And well, joke on him, I actually did. So as soon as I turned 18, I had saved up money and got myself a flight to Bali. That was my first ever solo trip. And silly me didn't know where to go, so I went to Kuta, and it was horrifying. It was quite terrible. Everyone was trying to sell me drugs every 50 meters along the way, and it was overwhelming, super crowded, but still beautiful. I went for Christmas and New Year's. Um, and that just left such a beautiful imprint, but I didn't go anywhere else. I stayed in Kuta, which was really silly.
That was in 2018, right?
17.
I was there too. End of 2017, we were both in Bali.
Yeah. And after that, I just moved to Portugal to escape the lockdown in Morocco. I bribed
Yeah.
my way through the country, moved to Portugal alone again with
Wow.
one suitcase and no money. Found jobs, worked 9 to 5s, just absolute lunacy. Was working on my own business, which I did for years. And eventually, when it started making, I remember it made its first $20. First $20 I made, I was like, screw this, I'm leaving. So I booked a flight to the first place I thought of, which was Thailand, and just kept working remotely and traveling because, well, I was making a little bit of money, but not enough to quit my job fully and live in Portugal. So I thought, okay, we're going somewhere cheap, but we're quitting our job. We're not staying in this. So I kept traveling around Southeast Asia and just working remotely like I did. And after 2 years of building it from scratch, I just decided to sell my shares. And with that money, I just traveled for a year and a half. I did not work. I just traveled and partied with 20 years old in different hostels, went skinny dipping, just went diving, did a lot of
Run that
drugs.
skinny dipping by again. Like skinny
One of
dipping.
the most memorable skinny dipping was in the Philippines, and there was bioluminescence.
Oh,
Wow.
oh.
And I was high on mushrooms. I saw God. I think it was me, but I saw me anyway.
Do you know what do you know what that actually means? That's actually algae, right, in the
Yes.
water, and the algae is having sex. That's why they light up. Did
Well,
you
they were
know?
lighting up all over me.
Well, that's an experience.
It was
Skinny
wonderful.
dipping. Yeah.
It was wonderful. And
Wow.
that day I was having such a shit time. I was thinking, what am I doing with my life? I just had a call with my mom. She was like, are you insane? You don't have a career. You don't have a husband. I don't have any grandchildren. What are you doing with your life? This is absolute lunacy. And I was like, screw this. And I went to the beach and I went skinny dipping and I realized it was glowing in the dark. And that just reinforced my delusion. So I thought, fuck this, I'm going to keep doing this. And I kept traveling for another year, not making any money, living off my savings, and just believing and trusting that everything was going to be okay. And for whatever fucking reason, it just keeps being okay. And I never run out of money. And I just do what I love, and it keeps paying for absolute no reason whatsoever. I have reached a level of delusion so beautiful, trust in the universe so beautiful. That shit just keeps coming to me. I remember I thought, okay, I want to help people do this after what happened to my brother, after his accident. I posted videos for about a week. A company reaches out and is like, do you want to come to the Maldives and become our model? I had never modeled a day in my life. I had been posting for about a week, and I got flown out first class to the fucking
Wow.
Maldives to become a model.
Oh.
And started on Instagram.
Helps be
with-
beautiful.
It does. And you forgot brilliant.
I'm
Yeah.
brilliant. How could I?
Then I started on Instagram, as I told you, doing coaching to teach people what I am doing. A month later, I blow up 30 million views, now 16,000 followers. And it has nothing to do with what I do or how I do it, because this is not what I am showing. It's about embodying it. And once you do fully, you become whole, the universe just rearranges in really weird ways to give you everything you want.
Amen.
And you
Universe
have seen my
provides.
pictures. I was not like this before. I was fat and ugly and insecure.
Not ugly.
What? Nah, I don't believe that.
It's on my Instagram. I was fat
I
and
don't
ugly and
believe
insecure.
that you could ever be fat and ugly.
Oh my God,
Come
you're
on.
about to be really shocked.
No, from the inside I'm talking about.
No, that is different. I'm always a chubby, funny girl inside, but outside, yeah, it was not beautiful. And now, You just embody different values, different
Was this
energy.
before they gave you the offer for being a model? Was it after?
No, it was of course before, way before. The moment I realized that I had control over how to build my reality just by embodying it, everything changed.
Mm. Yeah.
The mushrooms did help too.
For sure.
What about you, Kike?
Yeah, geeks.
Tell us.
For me, I was working on my own company like a slave. I was working from the moment I woke up. I would work all day until I would be working on my computer till like 1 or 2 in the morning until I would fall asleep. I would go to sleep. I would dream about work, and I would wake up and I'd be like, and just like do over. And so I truly wasn't living. And I was broken mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically. I stopped working out. So I talked to my co-founders and I said, this is not living. So I came to Bali to find myself. So cliche, as everyone does. And I decided that I'm going to stay here and this is living. So I sold the company and I just stayed in Bali, which brings me to my next question. When I moved here, I was broken and I was not in a good place. And I had I don't know if we can call it a midlife crisis, but I was like, I'm 32, I'm single, away from my friends. By single, I mean unmarried. Am I a fuck up? And it was like a question that when I first got here, it really pondered on me. But I think in today's generation, like we decide what we consider success and how we want to live. And I don't think today I'm a fuck up by any means, but I wonder if a lot of people feel that way.
About you?
No, about themselves.
You know, you for a second, I had this picture of Eat, Love, Pray. You know, the Julia Roberts, right?
Yeah, the movie.
Yeah, and you know, and you could actually play the counterpart in that movie, and then your background comes forward. I'm sure he had. You know, they never showed the man's background in that movie. Where imagine there was a movie showing how this guy actually got to Bali, going through not the breakups that Julia did, you know, but actually being a workaholic and being on a semi-crisis burnout, and then comes to Bali to find himself, and then finds Julia. I mean, this would be super romantic how you just said it. I just envisioned that right now, that right there, you know. So by no means, believe me, by no means is that a fuck up.
Oh,
That's a success story.
I agree. But at the time, my friends were like, "What are you doing? Why are you moving to Bali? Do you know anyone there? Like, why are you working? Like, what are you doing?" And it was when the whole world and your whole reality is questioning you and telling you you're wrong and thinking you're lost and you're messing up, then it definitely makes you question. But to this day, one of the best decisions of my life.
Because you decide to get other friends.
Yes.
Yeah. But realistically, have you noticed how here in Bali, when you meet people, the first question they go for is not what do you do? And I absolutely love that. Your value is not measured by what you do for a living, but who you are as an individual. They genuinely get to know you.
That's one of my favorite things about Bali. Your worth is not your salary, but it's your.
Yeah.
I'm still wondering what you do, by the way.
Nothing. I am just pretty and live. I am just pretty and live.
I'm still wondering how the heck you could be actually fat and ugly. Seriously, nothing wrong with being fat and ugly, but what you mentioned, like you were different.
I was deeply dysregulated. I was under so much stress. My cortisol levels were doing roller coasters.
Well,
I was working just like he
I
said,
think it was maybe
24/7.
As a child, the environment.
No, my environment was wonderful. I was hot and then became fat because of the stress, and then became hot again.
Yeah, wait,
So
what
that
was the
part-
stress? What was the stress? What happened there?
You really want to know?
I do want to
An
know.
unhealthy relationship. I did mention that on my Instagram a couple of times. So when you are surrounded by the wrong people, it really takes a toll on you. And once you do realize that, you say, screw you guys, I'm going home. And home is me. And we took care of me better than anyone could have
I see
ever.
a common theme here, because your friends were constantly questioning you. You had the relationships, and me with my various different marital situations.
When I was 18, I went to a CEO panel, and one of the things that they told me is, you are an average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So pick wisely. So that really, your environment really shapes who you are. So I started choosing, who do I want to be like? And I was like, that person I admire, or that person's going places. I started getting closer to them. So that lesson for me at a young age like really shaped my future. And I was very conscious about who are my friends and where am I spending my time. So what you said is about getting your new friends. That makes a huge difference.
And then when you start increasing the time with the people that you do want to be around with, automatically you'll realize this is your environment and you'll start changing it.
That is beautiful, and that is very, very true. The people you surround with yourself with are, you must pick that wisely, but again, you must also remember that you have to become the person they want to be around. So if you are reactive, if you are not aware, if you are not conscious and mindful, then why would they want to be around you? So it starts by putting in the work inwards.
I think one of the reasons why a lot of people don't understand why we moved to Bali or why we moved to a new country and start a new life is because our parents, the older generations, they didn't do that. And they weren't taught that that's a possibility. We're born and we're told this is how you live your life and this is what you do. This is your script. And we all broke away from the script. And we decided, no, we're going to live on our own terms.
In the most dramatic way possible.
Yeah. I'm leaving. I found my paradise. But I find it very interesting. So why do you think the older generations didn't have this escape?
Well, first, a lack of awareness.
I think lack of awareness, and I think the limitations back in the olden days. There was quite a lot of taboos. Huh? The taboo on sexuality, the taboo on various behavior, the behavioral aspects. There was a lot of taboos in the olden days where people were restricted and limited, but those teachings were not actually your parents' teachings. Those teachings were their parents' teachings. So what you were actually taught how to behave was actually your grandparents' behavior that was being trickled down onto you.
So growing up in Morocco, my parents were also strict-ish. They were stricter with me than they were with my brother, for example. However, I was always an absolute menace and completely unhinged. So I didn't care to hide anything. I just told them straight away, I do not care, you are wrong, and here's the why. And I would give them a detailed explanation on why they were wrong, and then point out all the logical fallacies in their
You
Train
can't
of
do
thought.
that with your parents. I can imagine how
I
they would go
did.
crazy.
There is absolutely nothing I fear.
As a woman, my God, imagine that. No, but from their perspective,
I
as a
hear
woman.
you.
and they tried absolutely everything.
Are you the only daughter?
No, they had another previous test, half sister, but that was a template. It worked perfectly. She went
Older?
to uni, yes,
Okay.
graduated top of her class.
Well done.
She's a nuclear engineer, got married straight after uni, had
Well,
popped
about
out
black
children.
sheep.
Yes, she is a template, never went
Yeah.
out anything. And I am the exact opposite. I've always been absolutely unhinged and fearless, and there was absolutely nothing they could do to keep me in or not do what I wanted, and I would rub it in every once and then. And I'd love to point out the logical fallacies in their thought process about religion, about how a woman should behave, about all the nonsense that they tried to indoctrinate me with. So at one point, they just got tired of it because nothing made me stop doing what I wanted to do. They tried physical punishment. I wouldn't even cry out of pride. Yes, they tried mental torture. Nada. I even would go on hunger strikes.
Wow.
Yes, there was nothing that would stop me from being my unhinged self. Nothing. And frankly, I do not regret a single thing. I had fun. I did absolutely everything I wanted to do. All the punishments they tried with me didn't work. So eventually they just accepted me. And now, funny enough, I see my mom being more open. She, for the first time, is traveling alone.
Wow.
She went diving. She went on girls' trips. I mean, I just lead by example. And I see her being more open because she also lived a very restrictive life. But then once I got to know her, genuinely know her, I figured out a lot of things about that woman. She also went out. She loved mini skirts. My sass and drama don't come out of nowhere, okay? It came from her and she hid it for as long as she could. But then once I looked at her like a human being and made space for her without judgment, because that judgment that she was projecting onto me was fear of her being judged by me and others. Once she saw that I didn't give a shit and that it didn't matter after all, that she still loved me even if I didn't care for those rules, she herself started to break free. And that's how you break generations worth of trauma, of fear, of shame, of insecurity, just by embodying the I don't give a fuck energy and being you 100%. And slowly I saw my parents come my way. For me, it's two islands: the dysregulated, fearful, shameful people, and the regulated people who embrace who they are, because we're humans, okay? There is nothing we should be ashamed of. I mean, as long as we're not harming ourselves or others, what is shame for? I mean, and you cannot pull people from an island to the other. You can only swim and show them the way. They'll follow eventually, and if they don't, I don't care.
Doesn't sound like this giving the subtlety of giving that wasn't very subtle on your parents. Must have not been.
Oh
very
no,
subtle.
it never was.
Like
but
the book Subtlety of Not Giving a
Fuck.
Fuck. I mean,
Yes.
you went in on the opposite way, didn't you?
Sir, my dad had cameras all over the house, and on my way out, yes, on my way out, when he specifically said don't go out, I would go by the camera and say, I am going out, I'll see you later. And it would just drive him insane that I didn't care at all about any form of punishment that he could think of. There was nothing that would stop me. And frankly, I didn't care to drink or anything like that. I've never enjoyed, I just love feeling my own presence, and I love going out and dancing, but I don't care for drinking.
That was the age of 18. You don't look a day older than 19 now at this moment.
I started when I was 13, I think. Going out and doing whatever I wanted, traveling alone, and then coming back after they said don't leave the house. And I would just travel alone. I did not care. What are you going to do? You're not going to kill me. Okay, well, then I don't care.
The rebel spirits is real.
Listen, nothing really matters. I will do it. And what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, you have to live your life.
Yes, and I did. As a matter of fact, when I moved to Portugal, they only found out I left the country the moment I arrived in Portugal. I was like, hey, by the way, I left the country. What? Yeah, I left the country.
Wow.
Yeah, this is my life. I can do whatever I want with it, and I am not responsible for their joy and happiness. That's their responsibility. I am responsible for my own.
From Portugal to Morocco, this wasn't that far, was it? It's like an hour, 2 hour flight, isn't it?
Sir, I went while Morocco was under military lockdown. I bribed my way out of the country. I had people drive me hidden, then got a boat to fucking Spain, then a bus, then a car, then a train, all the way to Portugal because it was still open.
My take on why people, our generation, why so many of us decide to leave and live in Thailand, live in Bali, or just elsewhere. Someone told me that just imagine that you're playing Monopoly. When you start, we each have the same amount of money and no properties, right? But what if I invite you to play Monopoly and all of the properties have been taken and there's all the money in the bank is everyone else, and you're just rolling the dice and you're paying here, and just like scraping by, trying to find enough money to pay the next and pay the next. And they said, this is what today's world is like. Like, you stay in whatever country you're from, like all of the property's been taken, like everything's so expensive. That's why so many people in our generation have a hard time moving out of their parents' house, buying homes. I know you at some point owned like 200 properties in Amsterdam, so perhaps not the best example. But I thought that was very interesting, and how a lot of us decide to find a new Monopoly board and find our new life where there is plenty of abundance. And I thought that was a very interesting thought process. What do y'all think?
I think you're right, actually. Now that I think about it, a lot of people take that leap of faith. Some get a job from their main country and then move to a cheaper country to be able to afford a little bit more while working on something they develop. So it is not about working harder to grow someone else's empire, but building your own. I always say there is nothing you can't do if you find what you're good at and monetize it. It doesn't matter what it is. I mean, sell feet pictures if you want to. It really doesn't matter. Find what you're good at and monetize it, and you'll be able to make money. The universe is not on a budget, and abundance is everywhere, and there is always something you can be good at doing that people need.
Definitely.
I find this is the first time I've actually heard of the Monopoly example, and I'd like to think about it a little bit. I mean, think about it. I'm playing Monopoly. I'm on this board. I'm rolling this dice, and I'm just going in circles and paying for everything. I mean, I'm thinking about it, right? And then I think, right, what if when I roll the dice, instead of rolling a 6 this way, I go that other way, go the other way, where there's no board,
You make your own rules.
which is dark.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think the psychological aspects about it, initially for me, first of all, the fear. What if there's nothing there? You know, it's a very crazy concept with this Monopoly board, because what if there's nothing there? I don't see anything there. My sight, I cannot see anything that's on that side. My senses, and I have this incredible fear of going out of this boundary, because this is my comfort. This is, at least I know what I'm paying for the things where I'm stepping on. So what if there's nothing there? What if I'm not actually supposed to be there? And what will happen if I do step in it and there is nothing there at all? So I can imagine this initial fear that you have right before you go and do something maybe so crazy. I think it's like exactly what you were saying in the previous point, that as long as it doesn't kill you, you know, it only makes you stronger in some way. But I tend to believe that if it doesn't kill you, it means you're strong enough already.
Yes.
So rather than if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. No, if it doesn't kill you, it means you're strong enough already. So I think the courage aspect when you're on this Monopoly board, right at the moment where you think, no, I am going to go, instead of to the right, I am going to go left. And the fear that comes with it, the psychological aspect, the having the confidence and the courage to embrace yourself before the impact.
The way you react, the way you choose to look at life really makes or break it. I always tell people, if you knew for certain that you would have to fail 367 times before you reach your ideal goal, before you have everything you've ever wanted, how fast would you want to fail? How fast would you want to have your heart broken? How fast would you want to be like a disappointment to your parents? How fast would you want to lose a job or be homeless if you knew that every time you failed, you got closer to what you actually want? And that reminds me, I have a little cousin, and she's the sweetest, cutest thing ever. And I remember she wanted to jump off a step. We have this little step in front of my house, and that little thing was terrified. I knew she could jump. She didn't know that. And that moment of terror, which lasted about 5 minutes of her standing there and being horrified of jumping.
So lifetime for her, 5 minutes for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of jumping off that step. And I hold her hand. I'm like, it's okay. You got this. You can do it. And that fear was just present before the jump. After she jumped and realized that she could actually jump, she wanted to do it for 3 more hours. And that is fear in our everyday life. We don't believe that we can do it, and that's why we fear that fear so intensely. But if we don't have someone who's going to hold our hand and be like, it's okay, you can do it, we have to do it for ourselves. And just hold our hand and be like, it's okay. You might fail, but you can do it again. How many times did it take us to fall before we actually walked? How many words did we spell wrong before we actually were able to talk or write? We must fail. It's just an integral part of life before we get to where we want to be. And fearing failure is what's wasting our most precious resource, which is time. So fear nothing. Be absolutely unhinged. If it doesn't kill you, you're getting closer to your goal. That is about it. And what you said about people was truly brilliant and inspiring, because people are tools of enlightenment. They're mirrors. They teach you things about yourself. You have to learn, be grateful, and move on. They're not meant to accompany you throughout life, and if they do, that's beautiful. But if they don't, they have served you enough.
It's exactly what you're. This is what I think as well. If you've become so good at failing, use become a failing expert, become a failing consultant, because there are others out there doing the same thing. It's the same things happening to them. Help them, show them how they can find the gratitude within the failure, because they need to deal with their emotions. And gratitude is simply a change of different perspectives. So when you're failing and you feel that you haven't learned anything from that failure, change your perspective, and you'll realize, looking at it from a different angle, that you did learn something from that failure. And that's what gratitude actually is. Gratitude is simply changing your perspective and looking at things from a very different perspective, rather than just being stuck and stagnant in one position with your perspective.
Yes. You are so wise.
No, stop it. I bet you say this to everyone. Flattery will get you everywhere, my dear.
Hopefully.
For sure. I think the road to success is filled with failures.
And
Obviously,
flattery.
typical saying.
Failure and flattery. I think that's a great title.
Yeah, I remember when
For your next book.
I was at another CEO panel.
Yeah.
One of the guys said, actually, this was for entrepreneurs. So who started a company? And some people raised their hand. And then he asked, which one of you has had a company that failed? And some people said me. And he said, good, you got your failure out of the way. So it's very hard. It's almost impossible to hit success on your first try. So it's almost a requirement to be successful at a company or almost anything. You have to fail. You have to make the mistakes. And if you don't, if you're scared of the mistakes, scared of failing, then you will never get there. So it's just part of it. So it's best just to embrace it, and then you will get there.
And embrace it in everything, because a lot of people are comfortable failing in some aspects, but not others. And the one that I noticed more often, because once you fail, your brain wants to protect you. Our brain is a silly little machine that tries its very best to protect us, but we are more powerful than that. So if you fail, anxiety level goes from 1 to 2. So you try and avoid to survive, because that's what our brain is trying to do, just survival. But we can expand, we can do more than survival. So instead of fearing failure, we should embrace it. A lot of people are very comfortable failing at the gym, but to gain weights, to gain gains, or fail in their business. That's okay, we'll make more money. But a lot of people are terrified of failing in human relationships. And that is a topic that I love discussing with a lot of people, because sure, it's okay to fail in certain areas, you might be comfortable with that, but in others might be a little bit more tricky. What do you think?
Oh, I agree 100%. And people feel emotional, and they let their emotions get on the way. So no one likes to feel heartbroken, or feel sad, or cheated, or mistreated, or disrespected. And it's more real when it's a human, because they're doing it to you directly, versus if it's a company or the gym, you're not getting the results, you don't feel it as direct.
Then it's interesting that you say doing it to you directly rather than doing it to themselves, because they're not cheating you, they're cheating themselves. And it might have happened because you had to learn a lesson, have stronger boundaries. So that shift from they did it to me to, oh, that is interesting. There is this part of me that has these needs that were not met, and I might have accepted a little bit too much when I shouldn't have, or too little when I shouldn't have. So rather of being introspective and understanding what that taught you and be better in the next one, people shut down and avoid.
Very true.
What do you think?
I think-
Well, you only have many marriages, so.
Well, I fear nothing after some of them. But
Any Russians in the back? Oh God, you are indestructible.
yes.
Oh.
But that's the thing. It's the physical thing. It's it's a connection of how do you feel emotionally? You feel this emotionally. How do you react to it physically? With fear makes you contract. Yeah? Breathing, letting it go, and when you're not afraid anymore, when you're happy, it makes you relaxed. So it's the physical aspects of what this emotion does to you. Gets you contracted, and when you're contracted, you're actually closing yourself off, and you're limiting yourself not just your thoughts, but physically, and even your air that you're breathing in, the way you're breathing through fear becomes very limited. And when you're happy, and the same thing with crying. When you're crying, you're contracting. When you're smiling, you're relaxing. So I don't know, this was, I think, one of the nights when I was having a big one in Amsterdam, Bender. I decided to switch and not do cocaine, but instead ketamine. And it really works. Rather than, so be very aware of the things that you do, which create fear inside of you and make you physically contract and close off your inside from the outside, so that you don't have that connection. So there's a disconnectivity, but try and relax yourself. And that's why with breath work, I'm sure with breath work, fear, you can get a lot of the fears out. When you've had an accident, for example, physically, the muscles have a muscle memory. So the muscles start moving in a certain way, behaving in a certain way, in order to really get rid of some of those congestions or the muscle stiffness. You really have to do a lot with breath work as well. I really believe in that. With breath work, you get through to certain points, and you get through yoga and Pilates, you get them stretched out, relaxed. So I think one of the greatest things probably to get rid of fear is to be really aware of your body, how fear is reacting on your body, and try and do things that gets it out of there, breath work or other stretches, and tries to make you're physically relaxed in various different situations.
Yes, or a boxing class, which I have soon. So let's wrap it up.
All right.
So, one of my goals for this podcast is to inspire people, inspire some of our viewers, our audience, by some of our stories and some of the amazing people that we'll be having on this podcast. So, one of the things that I would like to ask you is, should you bet on yourself?
Who else will you bet on? When people say you're so full of yourself, I'm like, who else should I be full of? If you're not full of yourself, you're full of shit. So be full of yourself and bet everything you have in you, because you are the only constant.
I agree. And what would you say to our viewers, Hennedy, to bet on themselves, to take the leap, to believe?
Be unhinged. Nothing matters. Put yourself out there. Be Delulu to the max. Because there are no limits. What you believe you deserve is what you're going to get. So be a little bit delusional. Be a little bit insane, Puta. Just go for it.
I agree. Be delusional and be a little bit crazy. However, it's like before going on a stage to do a presentation. If you don't feel that fear and the nerves and being anxious about going on stage, in my thought processes, I feel that you're not going to be the best you can be if you don't go through that process before you go on stage, actually feeling those nerves and going, you know what, I am going to find my courage, and with the courage that I go out there, I am going to be the best version of myself. So the first step is really feeling the fear, feeling it, and yet in the face of danger, in the face of that fear, finding your courage, finding yourself, and putting yourself out there. And being delusional does help, because if you think you're going to be incredible and the best you are, you maybe are, but it's definitely going to help you get over that fear.
Yes. And confidence comes with competence, and competence only happens when you practice. So you might suck at first, like we all do. Keep trying, it doesn't matter.
And that's where failure jumps in again. Yeah, well done. That's a nice one.
Yeah, one of my favorite stories is Mark Cuban, obviously a renowned billionaire. Even doesn't matter how you feel about him, whether you like him or not. He's successful in terms of money. And I was hearing the story how he bought the Dallas Mavericks. So he went to the stadium as a guest. And then he was talking to his friends, and he said, man, if I was running this place, I would be selling the popcorn for this much, and I would have this here, and I would change blah, blah, blah. And then he kept saying, if I owned this place, I would. And I would do it so much better. He went home that night and he said, it's time to put my money where my mouth is. So the next day he went in, made an offer to buy the Dallas Mavericks, and then we know the rest. He's won the championship, he's very successful, but he actually decided to bet on himself. Put your money where your mouth is. And then, so amazing. Like, to me, it's so beautiful.
Actually, one of the best investments ever was buying myself things I wanted, go into therapy. Just the investment you put towards yourself, buying yourself a membership at the gym. Those are the best. The food you eat, invest everything you have in you.
Agree.
You should definitely bet on yourself. There's never been a time with so much opportunity as today. With simply a computer or just a phone and a good idea, you can start a website or an Instagram page and reach a global audience. Our parents and previous generations didn't have these opportunities. If they wanted to start a business, they needed to start a shop, a restaurant, or some sort of physical location. That requires a large investment, and you are, for the most part, limited to a local target market, meaning the people that can buy your product or food need to physically go there, so it's a very limited market. And you can only sell so many products or have a limited number of tables at the restaurant or rooms at the hotel. With digital business or products, your reach is global, and there's no limits to how much you can sell. But is it easy? Of course not. If it was, everyone would do it. But that's the magic of it. The journey, overcoming challenges, getting creative to finding solutions. And when you do, it's one of the most rewarding experiences ever. One of my mentors actually has a tattoo that reads, "The harder the battle, the sweeter the victory." So embrace the challenges and tackle them with enthusiasm and grace. Each obstacle or challenge is there to teach us a lesson, make us stronger and better, and get us a step closer to our goals.
Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed our first episode of the Bali podcast. We will be back next week with very exciting, fun, and spicy content. So be sure to subscribe and follow us on Instagram, TikTok. We'll have those posted in the comments. Thank you so much. Any final comments?
Ta-ta. I have to go.
Oh, there's a. You know how you have those. Right, guys. Wait. Where are you going? Where's everybody going? I want to have my.
I have to
Oh,
go.
no, that's perfect. See, the point is.
Okay.
We want to thank Nebula Coworking for sharing this beautiful studio. If you're ever in Bali and need a podcast studio, we highly recommend checking this beautiful studio and co-working space. Cheers.